Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a horizon that stretches out in every direction, a perfect straight line where the earth meets the sky. As the sun begins its slow, deliberate descent, the intense heat of the afternoon starts to soften, replaced by a gentle, creeping coolness. You are standing in the heart of the desert at twilight, a place of profound stillness and ancient wisdom. Take a slow, deep breath in, feeling the air grow lighter and crisper. If you find this desert silence helpful for your rest and enjoy these nightly journeys into the wonders of our world, I invite you to gently subscribe to the channel and like this video. Your presence here helps us maintain this quiet space for everyone seeking a peaceful transition into sleep. In the stillness of this cooling landscape, it is helpful to think about what truly makes a desert. We often imagine these places as defined by heat, but the scientific reality is much simpler. A desert is defined by its thirst. To be classified as a desert, a region must receive less than 10 inches of precipitation in an entire year. This means that some of the coldest, most frozen reaches of our planet are just as much a desert as the sun-scorched plains of the Sahara. It is a world shaped not by the sun, but by the absence of water. When you look at a globe, you begin to realize just how much of our home is defined by these quiet, dry expanses. Deserts cover roughly 1/3 of the Earth's total land surface. They are the silent lungs of the continents, holding space for a unique kind of life that has learned to master the art of patience and conservation. As the sun finally slips below the horizon, the desert undergoes one of the most dramatic transformations in nature. In many parts of the world, the humidity in the air acts as a thick, heavy blanket, trapping the warmth of the day and holding it close to the ground. But here, the air is remarkably dry. Without that veil of moisture to hold the heat back, the warmth of the day simply radiates upward, escaping into the vast dark reaches of space. This is why the transition from day to night can feel so sudden. The temperature can drop by 40 degrees or more in just a few hours. The Earth is exhaling, letting go of the sun's energy and settling into a deep, restorative chill. The light here lingers in a way that feels almost magical. Because the horizon is so flat and the atmosphere is so clear of dust and water vapor, the golden hour stretches out longer than it does in the shadows of the mountains or the humidity of the coast. The sunlight travels through a greater thickness of the atmosphere at this low angle, scattering the blue light and leaving behind a world painted in soft ambers, deep violets, and dusty roses. It is a long, slow fading of the day that gives the mind a chance to pause and settle. As the sky turns to a deep velvet blue, we begin to move our focus away from the infinite sky and down toward the ground beneath us. We start to notice the intricate patterns in the earth and the fine, cooling textures of the floor that supports us. We look down at the individual grains that make up this vast landscape, feeling the shift in the very foundation of the desert as it prepares for the night ahead. As we settle into this quiet twilight, let your attention drift downward to the ground beneath you. Imagine the sensation of the sand as it begins to lose the fire of the day. If you were to run your hand across the surface, you would find that the grains are already beginning to feel smooth and refreshing against your skin. This vast floor of the desert is more than just dust. It is a collection of billions of tiny stories, each one a fragment of the Earth's long history. Most of the sand you see in the world's great deserts is composed of silica, usually in the form of the mineral quartz. Quartz is incredibly resilient, a survivor of the elements that refuses to break down completely. Instead, it breaks into these tiny crystalline pieces that catch the fading light. If you were to look at a single grain under a magnifying glass, you might see a miniature gemstone, translucent and clear, holding within it the memory of mountains that existed long before we did. These grains have been on a journey that spans millennia. Unlike the sand on a beach, which is shaped by the rhythmic pulling of the tides, desert sand is shaped by the relentless, invisible hand of the wind. Over thousands of years, as the wind carries these grains across the empty plains, they collide with one another in a soft, perpetual dance. This constant friction acts like a slow-motion polisher, rounding off the sharp edges of the quartz until each grain is a nearly perfect microscopic sphere. It is this smoothness that allows the sand to flow like water when it pours from your hand, a liquid movement born of 1,000 years of wind and travel. The colors of the desert floor are just as varied as the landscapes themselves. While we often think of sand as a simple tan or gold, the palette is actually dictated by the unique minerals found in the local earth. In the vast stretches of the Australian outback or the Namib, the sand can take on a deep, burning red or a rich orange. This is caused by iron oxide, essentially a fine coating of rust that has developed on the grains over eons of exposure to the air. In other places, you might find sands as white as fallen snow, made of pure gypsum or dark volcanic blacks that absorb the last of the sun's rays. Each color tells you a story of the chemistry of the land beneath the surface, a silent map of the minerals hidden below. One of the most comforting things about the desert sand is its ability to protect and insulate. Sand is a remarkably poor conductor of heat. During the day, the very top layer might become too hot to touch, but if you were to dig your fingers just a few inches into the earth, you would find a surprising deep coolness. The spaces between the grains act as tiny pockets of insulation, preventing the sun's heat from penetrating deep into the ground. For the many creatures that call this place home, this cool layer is a sanctuary, a place to wait out the heat in a world that remains constant, dark, and calm. When these sands gather in truly massive quantities, they form what geologists call an erg. These are not just patches of sand, but vast inland seas that can stretch for tens of thousands of square miles. To stand in the middle of an erg is to be surrounded by an ocean of earth, where the horizon is nothing but waves of gold and shadow. In the Sahara, the Grand Erg Oriental covers an area larger than many countries, a silent kingdom of silica that ripples and breathes under the weight of the atmosphere. As the wind begins to pick up in the cooling night air, we can almost feel the landscape start to shift. The sand is never truly still. It is a traveler, always moving, always seeking a new shape. We watch as the surface begins to ripple, the individual grains lifting and falling, starting to build the great architectural wonders of the desert. The horizon is no longer a flat line, but a series of soft, rolling curves that rise up to meet the stars, forming the rhythmic silhouettes of the dunes. The wind, tonight, is a gentle sculptor, working in the dark to rearrange the world while we watch from the stillness of our rest. As we look across the horizon, we see that the dunes are not static hills, but living, moving structures. They possess a rhythm, a slow-motion choreography that responds to the invisible touch of the air. In the soft moonlight, the shapes of these dunes reveal the secret history of the winds that created them, telling a story of movement that spans years and decades. Some of the most iconic shapes emerging from the shadows are the Barchan Dunes. These are elegant, crescent-shaped mounds that look like fallen moons resting on the desert floor. They are born in places where the wind blows consistently from one primary direction. The two horns of the crescent point away from the wind, marking the path of the air as it pushes the sand forward. It's a beautiful geometric symmetry, a physical map of the wind's journey across the open plains, showing us exactly which way the breath of the earth is moving. In other parts of the desert, where the winds are more restless and blow from many different directions throughout the seasons, we find the magnificent star dunes. These are some of the tallest dunes in the world, rising like massive, sandy cathedrals toward the stars. Because the wind hits them from all sides, they don't travel across the landscape like the crescents do. Instead, they grow upward, their ridges spiraling out from a central peak, creating a complex star pattern that remains anchored in place. They are permanent monuments to the desert's changing breath, growing taller with every gust. Then there are the longitudinal dunes, sometimes called safes. These are long, narrow ridges that can stretch for incredible distances, sometimes over 100 miles in nearly perfectly straight lines. From a distance, they look like the ripples on a giant washboard or the furrows of a vast golden field. They form parallel to the prevailing wind, creating natural corridors of sand that can guide a traveler across the emptiness for days, providing a sense of order in the vastness. It is fascinating to realize that these massive structures are actually in constant motion. A dune can migrate, slowly creeping across the desert as the wind carries individual grains from the windward side to the crest. Depending on the size of the dune and the strength of the breeze, a single dune can travel up to 50 feet in a single year. It is a slow, patient migration, a mountain that walks while the world sleeps. If you were to leave a marker in the sand and return a decade later, you might find the entire landscape has shifted, the hills having moved to occupy the valleys of the past, leaving only a memory of where they once stood. This movement is most dramatic at the slip face. Every dune has two distinct sides, a long, gentle slope where the wind pushes the sand upward, and a steep, sharp drop-off on the protected side. As the sand reaches the crest, it eventually becomes too heavy for the angle to hold. Gravity takes over, and the sand collapses in a miniature avalanche, sliding down the slip face. This constant cycle of climbing and falling is what allows the dune to move, a never-ending process of rebuilding itself, grain by grain, As these millions of grains tumble and slide against one another in the cooling night, they do more than just change the shape of the land. In the deep stillness, the friction of this movement begins to create something unexpected. The desert, usually so silent and still, starts to find its own unique voice in the dark. This voice is one of the desert's most enduring mysteries, the phenomenon of the singing sands. It is an hauntingly beautiful acoustic wonder that has puzzled travelers and explorers for centuries. As the sand slides down the face of a dune, it doesn't always move in silence. In certain places, it begins to emit a low-frequency hum, a deep resonant drone that can reach a volume of 105 decibels. This isn't a sharp or jarring noise, rather, it is a steady rhythmic thrum that sounds like a distant swarm of bees, a low-flying plane, or the deep, solemn note of a pipe organ echoing through a vast cathedral. In the absolute stillness of the night, this sound can carry for miles, a ghostly melody rising from the earth itself. This music is born from the simple friction of movement, but the science behind it is incredibly precise. For a dune to sing, the conditions must be perfect. The individual grains of sand must be of a very specific size and shape, usually small, well-rounded, and containing a high amount of silica. They must also be exceptionally clean, free from the fine dust or organic matter that might otherwise act as a cushion and dampen the sound. When a layer of this specialized sand begins to slide, the grains brush against one another and their movement becomes synchronized. Each grain acts like a tiny instrument, and when millions of them vibrate together, their individual pulses combine into a powerful, collective chorus. It is a rare gift of geology, found in only about 35 deserts around the globe, from the Gobi in Asia to the Namib in Africa and the Mojave in North America. The sensation of being near a singing dune is often described as standing next to a giant subwoofer. Because the frequency of the sound is so low, the vibrations travel easily through the ground. You can feel the hum rising through the soles of your feet and settling in your chest, a gentle, rhythmic thrumming that seems to match the slow, steady pace of your own breathing. It is a deeply grounding experience, a physical reminder that the landscape around you is not just a static backdrop, but a living, vibrating entity. Ancient nomads often spoke of these sounds as the voices of desert spirits, or the songs of hidden cities buried beneath the dunes. But the truth is perhaps even more poetic. It is the sound of the earth shifting in its sleep. Interestingly, every singing desert has its own unique pitch. No two dunes sound exactly the same. The frequency of the hum is determined by the diameter of the sand grains, and perhaps most importantly, by the moisture content of the sand. Even the slightest change in humidity can shift the note, turning a deep bass growl into a lighter, more musical tenor. In the dry, cooling air of the night, the sand is at its most resonant. The lack of moisture allows the grains to slide past one another with minimal resistance, creating a pure, clear tone that rings out through the darkness. As the singing of the sands fades back into the natural quiet of the night, take a moment to notice the air around you. It is growing noticeably colder now. The heat that the sun spent all day pouring into the ground is beginning to vanish, leaving behind a crisp, thin atmosphere that feels refreshing and still. As you lie there, let your breath slow down to match the deepening silence of the dunes. Inhale the clean, cool air, and as you exhale, feel the weight of your body settling into the softness of your bed. The desert is cooling, the vibrations are settling, and the world is becoming very quiet. Take a slow, deep breath, letting your lungs expand with the cool, crisp desert air. As you exhale, imagine the weight of your body settling, sinking just a little deeper into the softness of your bed, much like the vast dunes settling into the stillness of the night. There is no rush, no choice, only the gentle rhythm of your own breathing and the quiet story of the cooling earth. Right now, beneath the invisible blanket of the night, a silent exchange is taking place. This is the process of thermal radiation. During the day, the desert floor acts like a giant sponge, soaking up the sun's intense energy and storing it in every grain of sand and every fragment of stone. But the moment the sun slips below the horizon, the ground begins to give that heat back to the universe. Without clouds to act as insulation, the warmth rises in long, invisible waves, traveling upward through the thin air and out into the cold reaches of space. It is as if the earth is sighing, releasing the tension of the day and preparing for the long restorative hours of the night. This process happens with such efficiency because desert air is incredibly pure. There is almost no water vapor here, no humid haze to trap the heat or scatter the light. This lack of moisture creates a sky that is exceptionally clear, a window into the cosmos that is rarely found anywhere else on our planet. In many parts of the world, the sky at night is a soft, dark gray or a hazy blue. But here, it is a deep velvety black, so profound and clear that it feels almost tactile. It is this perfect clarity that draws astronomers to the world's most remote deserts. Places like the Atacama in Chile or the high plateaus of the Sahara are home to the most powerful telescopes on Earth. Scientists build these observatories here because the air is not only dry but remarkably steady. Up on these high desert plains, they can look through the atmosphere with very little distortion, capturing light that has traveled for billions of years just to reach a mirror resting in the sand. When you are far from the lights of civilization, the stars do not just appear as distant pinpricks. They become a source of light themselves. In a truly dark desert, when the moon is hidden, the Milky Way is so bright and dense that it can actually cast a visible shadow. If you were to hold your hand over the pale sand, you would see a soft, fuzzy silhouette created entirely by the collective glow of billions of stars. It is a humbling thought to be illuminated not by a single sun, but by the distant ancient heart of our own galaxy. As you look up at these steady points of light in your mind's eye, you might notice that they don't seem to flicker as much as they do elsewhere. We are taught from childhood that stars twinkle, but in reality, stars shine with a constant, unwavering light. The flickering effect, known as scintillation, is actually caused by turbulence in Earth's atmosphere, pockets of warm and cold air, bending the light as it passes through. But in the still, uniform air of a desert night, that turbulence is often minimized. The stars hang in the sky like solid jewels, steady and calm, watching over the sleeping world. But while the sky remains silent and fixed, the world below is beginning to stir. The cooling of the sand is a signal, a long-awaited invitation for the creatures that have spent the day hiding from the sun's reach. Down among the long shadows of the dunes, tiny movements are breaking the stillness. Life is waking up under the watchful gaze of the Milky Way, and the first of the night's inhabitants is about to make its appearance. The cooling sand is more than just a floor. It is a roof for those who have spent the daylight hours in the quiet safety of the earth. Near the base of a gently sloping dune, a small disturbance breaks the smooth, wind-swept surface. A tiny pointed nose emerges, twitching in the crisp night air, followed by eyes that reflect the faint silver glow of the stars. This is the fennec fox, the quintessential spirit of the desert night, finally stepping out from its subterranean sanctuary. As it fully emerges and shakes the dust from its coat, you might be struck by just how delicate and small it truly is. The fennec fox holds the title of the smallest canine in the entire world. Even fully grown, it rarely weighs more than 2 or 3 pounds, making it significantly smaller and lighter than the average house cat. It is a miniature marvel of evolution, perfectly scaled for a life of conservation and agility in an environment that demands both. In the vastness of the desert, its small size is its greatest advantage, requiring very little energy and even less water to maintain. But its most striking feature, the one that defines its silhouette against the dark horizon, is its ears. These ears are magnificent, growing up to 6 inches in length, nearly half the length of the fox's entire body. While they are exceptional tools for hearing, capable of detecting the faint rhythmic scuttle of a beetle or the burrowing of a lizard deep beneath the sand, they serve an even more vital purpose for a survival. These oversized ears act like natural radiators. They are filled with a dense network of tiny blood vessels that sit very close to the thin skin. As the cool night breeze passes over them, it chills the blood within, which then circulates back through the rest of the body, gently lowering the fox's core temperature. It is a biological cooling system, a silent air conditioner that allows the fennec to regulate its heat in a world of extremes. As the fox begins to trot across the dunes, its movements are almost entirely silent, leaving behind only the faintest of tracks. This is because the fennec fox has thick, plush fur covering the very bottoms of its paws. This fur acts like a pair of natural padded socks. It provides a layer of insulation against the sand, which can remain surprisingly warm for hours after the sun is set, and protects the sensitive pads from the abrasive texture of the desert floor. More importantly, this padding prevents the fox from sinking into the loose, fine grains of the dunes, allowing it to move with a ghost-like grace, almost as if it is floating over the shifting landscape rather than walking upon it. Unlike many other fox species that prefer a solitary, lonely existence, the fennec is a deeply social creature. They thrive in the company of their own kind, living in close-knit family groups that often consist of a mated pair and several generations of their offspring. Together, They construct and maintain complex underground dens, vast interconnected networks of tunnels and soft, sandy chambers that can stretch for over 30 feet. These burrows are more than just homes. They are communal sanctuaries that stay at a constant, comfortable temperature, providing a stable world for the family while the surface above swings between the blistering heat of noon and the biting chill of midnight. Perhaps most incredible of all is how these tiny hunters sustain themselves in a land where a single drop of rain is a miracle. In the heart of the deep desert, open water is a rare luxury, often hundreds of miles away. The fennec fox has adapted so perfectly to this scarcity that it does not actually need to drink standing water to survive. It is a master of biological efficiency, deriving every necessary drop of moisture from the food it finds in the dark. The moisture-rich tissues of insects, the occasional desert berry, or the small rodents it captures. Its kidneys are some of the most efficient in the animal kingdom, ensuring that not a single drop of precious hydration is wasted as it navigates the dry expanse. The fox pauses for a moment, its large ears swiveling independently to catch a sound far off in the distance. Perhaps the movement of a companion or the stirrings of a distant hunter. It is not the only creature that has waited for the sun to vanish before beginning its day. While the fennec fox is a master of the canine world here, there is another small hunter, even more elusive and mysterious, that shares these same cooling scenes. A feline that moves with such profound silence and stealth that it is often referred to as the ghost of the dunes. As the fennec fox disappears into the soft shadows of a nearby ridge, another presence makes itself known, not by sound, but by a subtle shift in the moonlight. This is the sand cat, a creature so elusive and well camouflaged that it is often called the ghost of the dunes. While many animals might visit the desert, the sand cat is a true specialist, holding the title of the only feline species in the world found almost exclusively in true deserts. While other wildcats might wander into the arid fringes of a scrubland, the sand cat thrives in the deep, shifting heart of the Sahara and the Arabian Peninsula, far from any permanent source of water or shade. If you were to look closely at its tracks in the cooling sand, you might notice something unusual. Unlike a domestic cat, whose paw prints are usually sharp and clear, the sand cat's trail is blurred and indistinct, almost as if the wind had already begun to whisk the prints away. This is because their paws are covered in a dense, thick mat of fur that grows even between their toes and over their pads. This natural padding acts like a pair of specialized sand shoes, spreading their weight across the surface so they never sink into the fine, powdery silt of the dunes. It allows them to glide across the landscape with a weightless, ethereal quality, moving across the ground without the crunch of a single grain of sand. While the fennec fox we met earlier has ears that stand tall like towers, the sand cat's ears are set much lower on the sides of its broad, flattened head. This anatomical design is a masterpiece of desert adaptation. Set low and wide, these ears are less likely to be buffeted by the abrasive wind-blown sand that often whips across the desert floor. Furthermore, this low-profile head allows the cat to crouch extremely close to the ground, keeping its silhouette almost invisible against the horizon as it stalks its prey. Its hearing is perhaps its most vital sense. The sandcat's ears are incredibly sensitive, capable of detecting the high-frequency, ultrasonic vibrations of small creatures moving deep beneath the sand. It doesn't just listen for movement on the surface, it listens for the heartbeat of the desert itself. It can pinpoint the exact location of a beetle or a small lizard buried inches below the surface, waiting with infinite patience for the perfect moment to dig with a lightning speed. Like the master of conservation it is, the sandcat is entirely moisture independent. In the vast stretches of the deep desert, open water is not just rare, it is often non-existent. The sandcat has adapted to this by obtaining every necessary drop of hydration from the bodies of its prey. By consuming birds, reptiles, and small rodents, it fuels its body and quenches its thirst simultaneously. It is a closed system of survival, perfectly tuned to an environment that offers nothing but heat and silence. In the stillness of the midnight hour, the sandcat remains motionless, a pale sand-colored shadow against the dunes. It waits, its ears swiveling toward a faint, rhythmic scratching sound coming from just beyond a cluster of dry brush. Somewhere nearby, a small, energetic creature is beginning its own nightly routine, a tiny, erratic dancer of the desert that moves in a way quite unlike any other rodent. This is the prey the cat seeks, a creature that has developed its own extraordinary ways to survive the vast, open spaces of the night. Out of the shadow of a dry, brittle shrub, a small form emerges into the moonlight. It moves not with a crawl or a scamper, but with a sudden, spring-loaded hop that seems to defy the weight of the world. This is the jerboa, one of the most specialized residents of the open dunes. To look at it in the soft glow of the stars, you might think you're seeing a miniature kangaroo, perhaps a tiny misplaced traveler from the Australian outback. But the jerboa is a rodent, a master of the North African and Asian deserts. Its hind legs are disproportionately long and powerful, designed to propel its light, fragile frame into the air with startling, explosive force. In the vast open expanses of the desert, where there are few places to hide, the jerboa relies on speed and unpredictability for its survival. When a predator, perhaps that watchful sandcat we encountered earlier, makes its move, the jerboa does not simply run. It launches itself. In a single bound, this tiny creature can cover up to 10 feet of sand, a distance many times its own body length. It moves in a zigzag pattern, a chaotic and erratic dance that makes it nearly impossible for a hunter to predict where it will land next. It is a blur of movement, a flickering shadow that vanishes as quickly as it appeared. To maintain control during these high-speed acrobatic maneuvers, the jerboa uses its tail as a sophisticated tool of physics. The tail is often much longer than the body itself, ending in a soft, dark tuft of fur. In the middle of a 10-foot leap, the jerboa can whip its tail to one side, using it as a rudder. This allows the creature to change direction mid-air, spinning its body to face a new path before its feet even touch the cooling sand. It is a gymnast of the dunes, performing feats of agility that allow it to navigate the shifting surface with ease. Much like the other inhabitants of this arid world, the jerboa has solved the problem of thirst in a truly remarkable way. It does not drink. It may go its entire life without ever lapping up a single drop of liquid water. Instead, its body is a living laboratory of conservation. Through the process of breaking down the dry seeds and sparse vegetation it finds, it creates what scientists call metabolic water. It extracts every necessary atom of hydrogen and oxygen from its food, synthesizing hydration internally to sustain its cells. It is a creature born of the desert, perfectly sustained by the very dryness that would claim the life of any other animal. But for all its agility and internal resilience, the jerboa must remain hyper-aware of the world above. Its ears, large and thin-skinned, are tuned to the lowest, most delicate frequencies of the night. It isn't just listening for the rustle of a cat in the brush, it is listening for a sound that is almost impossible to hear. The jerboa's hearing is so sensitive that it can detect the faint, low-frequency disturbance of air molecules, the sound of an owl's wings as they displace the atmosphere. In the absolute heavy silence of the desert night, even the most silent hunter leaves a footprint in the air. As the jerboa freezes, pressing its small, warm body against the cooling sand to remain invisible, we can look up from the ground toward the vast, dark canopy above. High above the dunes, silhouetted against the velvet black of the star-strewn sky, a shape moves with a ghostly, terrifying grace. It is a master of the air, a predator that has perfected the art of the silent approach, gliding through the darkness on wings that make no sound at all, watching the desert floor with eyes that see the world in a way we can only imagine. The shape in the sky belongs to the pharaoh eagle owl, a magnificent sentinel of the desert night. As it glides over the silver-tinged dunes, it does so in a silence that is almost absolute. This isn't just a matter of luck. It is a masterpiece of biological engineering. Most birds produce a distinct whistling or flapping sound as their wings cut through the air, but the desert owl is different. Its feathers are edged with a specialized comb-like fringe that breaks up the air turbulence into tiny microcurrents. Behind this fringe, a soft, velvety down covers the surface of the feathers, absorbing any remaining sound. To the small creatures below, there is no warning, only the sudden, cooling shadow of wings that move like smoke across the stars. It is a flight so perfectly muffled that the owl can hear the tiny movements of its prey without the sound of its own wings interfering. The owl's vision is equally specialized for this low-light world. Unlike our own eyes, which are roughly spherical, the eyes of the pharaoh eagle owl are tubular, shaped more like the barrels of a high-powered telescope. This shape allows for a much larger cornea and lens, gathering even the faintest glimmers of starlight and reflecting them onto a densely packed layer of light-sensitive cells. These eyes act like natural telephoto lenses, providing incredible magnification and depth perception in the dimmest conditions. However, because they are so large and elongated, they are held in place by bony structures called sclerotic rings. The owl cannot move its eyes within their sockets at all. To look to the side, it must move its entire head. To compensate for this, the owl possesses a neck of incredible flexibility. It can rotate its head up to 270 degrees in either direction, allowing it to scan the entire horizon without moving a single muscle in its body. This allows the owl to remain perfectly still, a statue on a rocky outcrop, while its head swivels with fluid, uncanny grace. To prevent the blood supply to the brain from being cut off during these extreme turns, the owl has a specialized reservoir system and flexible arteries that ensure a steady flow of oxygen, even when its head is turned completely backward. It is a quiet, rhythmic movement, a slow scanning of the dunes that requires no effort, perfectly suited for the unhurried pace of the desert night. In a landscape where tall trees are a rarity, the Pharaoh eagle owl has adapted its lifestyle to the geography of the earth itself. While we often associate owls with hollow trunks or high branches, these desert hunters are more likely to be found nesting in the quiet shadows of a cliff crevice, or even taking over an abandoned burrow in the sand. These earthen homes provide a stable, cool temperature during the heat of the day, protecting the owl and its young from the relentless sun. From these hidden vantage points, they survey their kingdom, playing a vital role in the desert's delicate balance. By hunting the small rodents and insects that thrive in the dark, they ensure that no one species overruns the sparse resources of the dunes, acting as the silent regulators of the desert's nocturnal life. As the owl settles onto a high, weathered ledge to watch and wait, our gaze drifts back down to the ground, away from the wide expanse of the sky and toward the intricate textures of the sand. Down here, in the shadows of the stones and the roots of the creosote bushes, a different kind of light is beginning to emerge. It is not the soft reflection of the moon or the distant fire of the stars, but a strange, haunting glow coming from the very earth itself. Small shapes move through the darkness, shimmering with an otherworldly hue that seems to defy the natural colors of the desert night. These are the smaller inhabitants of the sand, and they carry a secret that only the darkness can reveal. If you were to walk through these dunes under the soft violet glow of a specialized light, the darkness would suddenly reveal a hidden electric world. Moving slowly across the cooling sand is a creature that seems to have stepped out of a dream, a scorpion, illuminated in a vibrant neon cyan blue. In the natural darkness of the midnight hour, it is nearly invisible, a shadow among shadows, but under the right spectrum of light, it transforms into a living lantern. This striking fluorescence isn't a trick of the eyes or a temporary reaction. It is a fundamental part of the scorpion's physical being, a silent glow that has existed for millions of years. This otherworldly radiance is caused by a very specific set of proteins, primarily one called beta-carboline, located within a thin, incredibly durable layer of the scorpion's exoskeleton, known as the hyaline layer. This layer is so resilient and chemically stable that even when a scorpion sheds its skin, the empty casing left behind in the sand continues to glow with that same eerie, beautiful blue. It is a chemical signature of an ancient lineage, a glow so persistent that it remains even in scorpion fossils that are millions of years old. Even in death and through the passage of geological eras, the minerals in their armor hold on to the light. Scientists have long wondered why a creature that relies so heavily on stealth would carry such a visible, glowing trait. The most compelling theory suggests that the scorpion's entire body acts as a giant, singular light sensor. By detecting the faint ultraviolet light provided by the moon and the distant stars, the scorpion can gauge the intensity of the night. Its skin translates this cosmic light into signals that tell the creature when it is exposed and when it has successfully found the safety of a deep shadow or a rocky crevice. It is a way of seeing with its whole body, a gentle, constant interaction with the celestial light that guides its slow trek across the desert floor. In the profound stillness of the desert night, time seems to move differently for the scorpion. These creatures are the ultimate masters of patience and energy conservation. They possess the remarkable ability to slow their metabolism to a mere fraction of that of most other invertebrates. In times of scarcity, when the wind is too high or the prey too few, a scorpion can enter a state of deep, quiet waiting. In this state, they require so little sustenance that they can survive on just a single meal over the course of an entire year. They exist in a rhythm of minimal effort, their hearts beating slowly, their bodies perfectly tuned to the long, lean stretches of the desert's calendar. This patient strategy has served them well through the staggering depths of time. Scorpions are among the oldest land-dwelling animals on our planet, having inhabited the earth for over 400 million years. They were here long before the first dinosaurs roamed the plains, and they remained essentially unchanged as the continents drifted apart and the great mountain ranges rose toward the sky. To look at a scorpion moving across the sand is to look at a design that nature perfected almost 500 million years ago, a silent, glowing survivor that has witnessed the rise and fall of countless worlds. As we watch this ancient wanderer disappear into the cool shadow of a weathered stone, let yourself settle deeper into the quiet of your own boss. The desert is a place of immense time and profound stillness, a landscape that asks for nothing but your quiet presence. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling the air move in and out with the same steady, unhurried rhythm as the wind over the dunes. We are moving into the heart of the night now, into the deepest part of the journey. The world around you is soft, dark, and secure, much like the hidden burrows beneath the sand where the desert secrets are kept safe until the return of the sun. In this stillness, there is a sense of belonging to a much larger, older story, one that continues long after the lights go out. Take a moment now to notice the stillness of the room around you. The air is calm and the shadows soft and familiar. In your mind's eye, imagine the vast, quiet expanse of the Sahara at midnight. It is a sea of stillness, stretching out under a blanket of stars so bright they seem to hum in the silence. The dunes here are like frozen waves held in place by the cool night air, waiting for the wind to whisper them into new shapes. When we think of the word desert, we almost always picture the Sahara first. It is the iconic image of the arid world, and while it is indeed the largest hot desert on our planet, it is actually the second largest desert overall. That title belongs to the icy reaches of Antarctica. Because a desert is defined not by its heat, but by how little rain or snow falls, the frozen, dry interior of the South Pole holds the record. Yet, the Sahara remains the queen of the sun-scorched lands, covering nearly 3.5 million square miles, an area almost as large as the entire United States. The name itself carries a simple, rhythmic beauty. Sahara is derived from the Arabic word Sahra, which simply means deserts. It is a name that hums with the history of the people who have navigated its dunes for millennia, a word that reflects the endless, repetitive nature of the landscape. To say the Sahara Desert is, in a way, to say the desert, a testament to its status as the ultimate expression of this environment. Though the surface appears parched and unforgiving, there is a secret hidden deep below the golden sands. Underneath the Sahara lies one of the largest freshwater aquifers in the world. Known as the Nubian Sandstone Aquifer System, it holds a staggering amount of ancient water. These are precious reserves that have been trapped in the rock for thousands of years. A hidden, silent ocean beneath a world of dust. It is a strange and comforting thought to know that while the surface is bone dry, a vast reservoir of life-giving water sits quietly in the dark, miles beneath the feet of the wandering fox. This water is a reminder of a very different past. Only a few thousand years ago, the Sahara was not a desert at all. It was a lush green landscape dotted with deep lakes and flowing rivers, where hippos and crocodiles lived in abundance and giraffes roamed through tall grasses. This green Sahara is part of a natural breathing cycle that occurs roughly every 20,000 years. It is caused by a slow, gentle wobble in the Earth's axis, a movement known as precession. This cosmic wobble changes the way sunlight hits the northern hemisphere, shifting the monsoon rains northward to transform the dust into a garden. We are currently in the dry phase of this great celestial cycle. The rains have moved away, and the green has retreated, leaving behind a world where every drop of moisture is a treasure. To survive in this current era of sun and sand, life has had to become incredibly patient and resourceful. The plants that remain have developed extraordinary ways to wait out the long, centuries, holding on to life with a tenacity that mirrors the desert's own endurance. As the stars shift slowly above the dunes, we begin to see how these silent sentinels of the sand have mastered the art of the long wait. While the Sahara sleeps under its blanket of stars, we move our mind's eye across the globe to the Sonoran Desert, where another master of patience stands tall against the indigo sky. This is the saguaro cactus, perhaps the most iconic silhouette in all the world's arid lands. To look upon a large saguaro is to look upon a living history book, a creature that measures time not in seasons, but in centuries. These giants can live for over 150 to 200 years, standing as silent witnesses to the passing of generations. For the first several decades of its life, a saguaro grows with an incredible, almost imperceptible slowness. It may take 10 years for a seedling to reach just 1 inch in height, tucked safely under the shade of a nurse tree like a mesquite or a palo verde. It is a life defined by the long game, a slow-motion climb toward the heavens that requires no hurry, only the steady resolve to remain. One of the most surprising things about the saguaro is how long it remains a single, solitary column. It does not grow its first arm, that characteristic branch that reaches upward, like a beckoning hand until it is at least 75 years old. Some may wait even longer, reaching a full century of age before they begin to branch out. When you see a saguaro with many arms, you are looking at an elder that has survived 100 years of droughts, heat waves, and winter frosts. It has earned its complexity through sheer endurance, growing its limbs only when it has reached a certain level of maturity and strength. Inside that tall green frame, the saguaro is essentially a massive living reservoir. When the rare desert rains finally arrive, the cactus works quickly to gather every drop. Its roots are shallow, spreading out in a wide, horizontal web just inches below the surface, ready to soak up the moisture before it can evaporate into the dry air. A fully hydrated mature saguaro can weigh over 2 tons, and a staggering 90% of that weight is pure life-giving water. It is a heavy, liquid pillar held upright by a strong internal framework of woody ribs, a tower of hydration in a land of thirst. To accommodate this sudden influx of weight and volume, the saguaro has evolved a clever piece of biological engineering. Its skin is not smooth, but folded into deep vertical pleats, much like the bellows of an accordion. As the cactus drinks and its internal tissues swell with water, these pleats expand, allowing the plant to increase its diameter significantly without the skin tearing. During long periods of drought, the saguaro slowly consumes its own internal ocean, and the pleats gently contract, the plant pulling inward to conserve what remains. It is a slow, rhythmic breathing of the body that mirrors the long-term rise and fall of the desert's own cycles. As the midnight hour approaches, the saguaro prepares for a rare and beautiful event. High atop its crown and at the tips of its arms, large waxy buds begin to stir. These are the saguaro flowers, and they are creatures of the dark. Unlike many plants that court the bees and butterflies of the day, the saguaro blooms primarily at night. One by one, the creamy white blossoms unfurl, exposing a yellow center and releasing a heavy, melon-like scent into the cool night air. This fragrance is a signal, a fragrant invitation sent out across the dunes. These flowers remain open for only a single night, closing forever by the following afternoon. They are waiting for a very specific visitor, a traveler of the air who thrives in the darkness and knows the secret pathways between the thorns. As the scent of the blossoms drifts on the breeze, the first faint flutter of wings can be heard approaching through the silence. The flutter of wings grows closer now, a soft, rhythmic pulsing against the stillness of the desert night. Out of the velvet dark, a small, furry shape appears, hovering with incredible precision before the glowing white blossom of the saguaro. This is the lesser long-nosed bat, a tiny, specialized traveler that has come specifically for this midnight feast. While many of us might think of bats only as creatures of the shadows, here in the desert, they are the vital guardians of life. These bats are the primary pollinators for some of the desert's most iconic plants, including the saguaro and the agave. As they dip their faces into the flowers to drink the sweet, energy-rich nectar, their fur becomes dusted with fine, yellow pollen. When they move from one cactus to the next, they carry this life-giving dust with them, ensuring that a new generation of giants will one day rise from the sand. It is a silent, ancient partnership, a dance between the plant and the pilot that has played out for millennia under these same stars. These bats are true nomads of the night. They do not stay in one valley or cave for long. Instead, they follow what scientists call a nectar trail. This is essentially a blooming highway of flowers that stretches for thousands of miles, beginning in the tropical regions of Mexico and reaching all the way into the American Southwest. As the seasons change and the warmth moves across the landscape, different succulents begin to bloom further north, and the bats follow the scent. They migrate with the timing of the flowers, moving in perfect synchronization with the Earth's internal clock. It is a journey of incredible endurance, a long-distance flight fueled entirely by the sugar found in the heart of the desert's most resilient plants. To reach the deep, hidden wells of nectar within a blossom, the lesser long-nosed bat possesses a remarkable tool. Their tongues are specialized organs, incredibly long and tipped with fine hairs to lap up moisture. When fully extended, a bat's tongue can be as long as its entire body. This allows them to reach deep into the tubular flowers of the saguaro, or the organ pipe cactus, without damaging the delicate petals or getting caught in the structure of the plant. It is a delicate, precise interaction. And because flying requires a tremendous amount of energy, those boats have a metabolism that is constantly running at high speed. To keep their tiny hearts beating and their wings flapping through the long, cool night, they must consume a staggering amount of food. A single desert bat can consume up to its entire body weight in nectar, pollen, or insects in just one night. Imagine the sheer number of flowers they must visit, the thousands of tiny focused sips required to sustain their journey through the darkness. Navigation in the desert night is a challenge of its own, especially when your food source is guarded by thousands of sharp wooden needles. The saguaro is a fortress of spines, yet the bats move between them with the grace of a ghost. They do this through the wonders of echolocation, emitting high-frequency sounds that are far beyond the range of human hearing. These sounds bounce off the objects around them, returning to the bats' sensitive ears as echoes. Their internal processing is so fast and so refined that they can build a perfect three-dimensional map of the cactus in total darkness. They can sense the position of every single spine, every curve of the flower, and every shift in the wind, allowing them to hover just inches away from danger without ever being touched. They move with a confidence that only millions of years of evolution can provide. As the bat finishes its meal and vanishes back into the high desert air, heading toward its next destination on the nectar trail, a profound silence returns to the crown of the saguaro. But the activity of the night is not limited to the sky. While the bats glide above the dunes, other creatures are beginning their own specialized rituals far below, right at the level of the sand. Down where the heat of the day still lingers in the deeper grains, a different kind of survival is taking place, one that relies not on the sweetness of flowers, but on the very breath of the morning itself, and the clever ways a small body can capture the water hidden in the air. In the vast ancient stretches of the Namib Desert, where the sand is stained a deep rusted orange by millions of years of oxidation, a small and patient architect of survival begins its nightly ascent. While the bats are busy in the high reaches of the cacti elsewhere, here, among the world's tallest dunes, the darkling beetle is preparing for the arrival of the mist. The Namib is one of the driest places on Earth, receiving almost no traditional rainfall, but it is blessed with a ghostly cooling fog that rolls in from the Atlantic Ocean during the quiet hours of the night. As this damp air moves over the cooling sand, the darkling beetle climbs. It moves with a slow, deliberate pace, navigating the shifting slopes until it reaches the very crest of a dune hundreds of feet above the desert floor. This beetle has mastered a technique known as fog basking, a beautiful example of how life adapts to the most extreme limitations. Once it reaches the top, it does not hide or burrow. Instead, it turns its body to face the damp breeze and tilts itself forward into a sort of headstand, lifting its rear high into the air. It stays perfectly still, a tiny dark statue against the gray veil of the fog. The beetle's back is not smooth. It is a masterpiece of biological engineering, and its shell is covered in a specialized pattern of microscopic bumps and valleys. The peaks of these bumps are hydrophilic, meaning they are water-loving. They act like tiny magnets for the moisture in the air, catching the microscopic droplets of fog and holding on to them. Between these water-attracting bumps are smooth, waxy troughs that are hydrophobic or water-repelling. As the fog continues to swirl around the beetle, the tiny droplets on the bumps begin to grow. They join together, becoming larger and heavier until gravity finally pulls them off the peaks. Because the surrounding channels are so slippery and wax-lined, the water doesn't soak in or spread out. It simply rolls. Guided by the tilt of the beetle's body, these precious beads of water slide down the beetle's back, gathering momentum until they reach the beetle's mouth, in a place where a single cup of rain might not fall for an entire year. This tiny creature creates its own private spring from the very breath of the ocean. This process of fog harvesting is so efficient that it has captured the imagination of scientists and engineers around the world. By studying the microscopic texture of the darkling beetle's shell, researchers are developing new materials that can pull clean drinking water out of thin air in arid regions. They are creating mesh tents and coated surfaces that mimic those hydrophilic bumps and hydrophobic troughs, offering a way for human communities to survive in dry climates just as the beetle has for millennia. It is a reminder that even in the harshest environments, nature has already solved the problems we are only just beginning to understand. But the beetle's resilience extends beyond its ability to find water. These small insects are also masters of temperature regulation. The Namib can swing from freezing nights to blistering daytime temperatures that would be lethal to almost any other insect. The darkling beetle, however, possesses a shell that is not only a water collector, but a shield. It can withstand heat that would cook the proteins in most living things, allowing it to remain active long after other creatures have been forced to retreat deep into the earth. It is a creature of extremes, perfectly balanced between the fire of the sun and the dampness of the night. As the fog begins to thin and the beetle, now fully hydrated, slowly descends back down the dune to find a cool spot for the coming day, we are reminded of the incredible lengths life will go to in order to preserve its spark. The desert is a place of scarcity, but for those who know its secrets, there is always a way to endure. This theme of water conservation is the golden thread that connects every inhabitant of the dunes. From the smallest insect to the largest mammal, the goal is the same: to hold on to every precious drop. And as we move deeper into the night, we look toward the horizon for the most famous master of this art, a creature whose very silhouette is synonymous with the desert's endurance. Standing tall against the starlit horizon, we find the creature most emblematic of this harsh landscape, the camel. Often called the ship of the desert, the camel moves with a slow, swaying gait that mimics the rolling motion of waves on a vast sandy ocean. For thousands of years, these animals have been the lifelines of human trade and travel across the arid wastes, carrying burdens and people where no other creature could survive. Their endurance is legendary, and every part of their anatomy is a testament to the desert's demanding nature. They are built not just to survive the heat, but to thrive within its constraints, moving with a steady, unhurried rhythm that mirrors the slow passage of the stars above. One of the most common myths about the camel is that their iconic humps are filled with water. In reality, these humps are a clever storage system for fat. By concentrating their body fat in one or two humps, rather than spreading it across their entire body under the skin, camels avoid the insulating effect that would make them overheat in the sun. This fat can be converted into both energy and a small amount of metabolic water when food and drink are scarce, allowing a camel to travel for weeks without a single meal. It is a concentrated battery of life tucked away on their backs, providing the fuel they need to cross the most desolate stretches of the Sahara or the Gobi. When a camel does find water, however, its ability to rehydrate is nothing short of miraculous. A thirsty camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in just 13 minutes. To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent of filling a large bathtub in the time it takes to have a short conversation. Most mammals would suffer from water intoxication if they drank that much so quickly, as the sudden change in osmotic pressure would cause their cells to fail. But the camel's body is built to handle the sudden influx, storing the water safely in its stomach and circulatory system to be used sparingly over the coming days. This resilience reaches down to their very blood. While most mammals have circular red blood cells, a camel's red blood cells are oval-shaped. This unique structure allows the cells to continue flowing through the veins, even when the blood becomes thick and viscous due to extreme dehydration. Furthermore, these oval cells are incredibly flexible. They can expand to over double their original size without bursting when the camel finally drinks its fill. It is a microscopic marvel of engineering that keeps their hearts beating and their systems functioning when others would have long since faltered. As the desert wind picks up, whispering through the dunes, the camel has ways to shield itself from the abrasive sand. They possess the rare ability to close their nostrils completely, turning their noses into airtight seals that keep out every fine grain of dust. Their long, double-layered eyelashes act as natural screens, catching the sand before it can touch their eyes, and a third, transparent eyelid sweeps across the eye like a windshield wiper to clear away any stray particles. Even their ears are lined with thick hair to filter out the environment. You might imagine that their thick, shaggy coats would be a burden in the heat, but they are actually a vital cooling mechanism. The woolly fur acts as a powerful insulator, reflecting the sun's radiation and preventing the external heat from reaching the camel's skin. By keeping the heat out, the camel reduces the amount of sweat it needs to produce, further conserving its internal moisture. In the cool of the night, this same coat helps them retain their body warmth against the plummeting temperatures, acting as a natural blanket that keeps them comfortable as they rest under the moon. The camel is a master of the open spaces, a giant of the dunes that commands the horizon. But as we lower our gaze from these giants to the very surface of the cooling sand, we find a different kind of movement. Smaller, sleeker shapes are beginning to stir, leaving intricate, rhythmic patterns in their wake. These are the reptiles of the night, creatures who have mastered the art of moving across the shifting dunes with a grace that is entirely their own, navigating the grains of sand as if they were moving through water. If you were to look down at the moonlit sand right now, you might notice a curious set of tracks. They don't look like the continuous winding trail of a typical snake. Instead, they appear as a series of separate, parallel J-shaped marks, almost like the rungs of a ladder pressed gently into the dust. These are the footprints of the sidewinder, a small rattlesnake that has developed one of the most specialized ways of moving in the animal kingdom. In the vast shifting world of the dunes, traditional slithering is difficult. Most snakes move by pushing off against solid objects like rocks or sturdy plants. But here, the sand simply gives way under pressure. To solve this, the sidewinder uses a technique called sidewinding. It throws its body forward in a rhythmic, looping motion, essentially walking across the surface. It is a beautiful, hypnotic dance to watch, a sequence of coils rising and falling in perfect synchronization with the shifting grains beneath it. What is truly remarkable about this movement is how little of the snake actually touches the ground. At any given moment, only two small points of the sidewinder's body are in contact with the sand. The rest of its weight is held suspended in the air as it loops forward. This isn't just an efficient way to travel over loose terrain, it is also a vital survival strategy. Even as the air begins to chill, the desert floor can hold on to the sun's energy for hours. By minimizing the surface area that touches the ground, the sidewinder significantly reduces the amount of heat it absorbs from the sand, allowing it to remain active while other creatures must wait for the earth to cool further. As it moves, you might notice the distinct horns sitting just above its eyes. These are not true horns, but specialized scales that have evolved for life in an abrasive environment. When the sun is high, these scales act like tiny sunshades, casting a shadow over the eyes to prevent glare. When the snake buries itself in the sand to hide from predators or wait for a meal, these scales fold down over the eyes, acting as protective lids that keep the sharp, microscopic edges of the sand grains from causing any damage. It is a simple, elegant piece of biological engineering that allows the snake to thrive in a place that seems designed to wear things down. Though the desert night may seem pitch black to us, the sidewinder sees the world in a completely different way. As a member of the pit viper family, it possesses heat-sensing organs located in small pits between its nostrils and eyes. These organs allow the snake to see infrared radiation. To a sidewinder, a warm-blooded mouse or lizard moving through the cold night air doesn't just appear as a shape. It glows like a bright thermal lantern against the dark background. This sixth sense is so precise that the snake can strike with perfect accuracy in total darkness, navigating the invisible map of heat that every living thing leaves behind. But while the sidewinder moves with a quick, looping energy, not every desert reptile is in such a hurry. Further along the edge of a rocky outcrop, where the sand meets the ancient stone, a much heavier, more deliberate shadow is beginning to stir. This creature moves with a slow, patient grace, its thick limbs pushing against the earth with a steady, unbothered rhythm. It is a master of the slow life, a colorful inhabitant of the shadows that carries the history of the desert in the very texture of its skin. This slow-moving wanderer is the Gila monster, a creature that seems to carry the very colors of a desert sunset on its back. As it pulls its heavy body across the cooling earth, you might notice that its skin doesn't look like the smooth, overlapping scales of the sidewinder. Instead, it looks as though it has been meticulously decorated with thousands of tiny, colorful beads. These patterns of vibrant orange, soft pink, and deep yellow, set against a charcoal black background, serve as a warning to others, but in the low light of the moon, they appear as a beautiful, intricate mosaic. The Gila monster is a true master of patience and conservation. While the desert above can be a place of intense activity, this lizard chooses a life of profound stillness. In fact, Gila monsters spend as much as 95% of their entire lives underground, tucked away in the cool, humid safety of their burrows. They emerge only for brief periods to hunt or to find a mate, living a life that is defined by long stretches of quiet rest. They are the ultimate practitioners of the slow life, waiting for the perfect moments to interact with the world above. If you were to gently touch the skin of a Gila monster, you would find that those bead-like structures are much more than just decoration. They are known as osteoderms, tiny, bony plates embedded directly within the skin. It is essentially a suit of flexible chainmail armor, protecting the lizard from the rough edges of the rocky crevices it calls home. These little bones provide a sturdy defense while still allowing the creature to move with the suppleness it needs to navigate the tight turns of its subterranean tunnels. Because the Gila monster spends so much time in a state of rest, it has evolved a clever way to manage its energy. Its tail is noticeably thick and rounded, looking almost like a fifth limb. This tail serves as a biological pantry, a place where the lizard stores concentrated fat. During the rare times when food is plentiful, the tail grows plump and firm. This stored energy allows the Gila monster to survive for months, and sometimes even a full year, without needing to eat another meal. It is a perfect system of self-sufficiency, tailored for an environment where resources can be unpredictable. While it moves with a heavy, unhurried gait, the Gila monster possesses a quiet power that demands respect. It is one of the very few venomous lizards in the world. Unlike the quick, piercing strike of a snake, the Gila monster's venom is delivered through a slow, chewing motion. It is a defensive tool meant to discourage anything that might disturb its peace. Yet, in a beautiful twist of natural science, this venom has become a source of healing for humans. a specific protein found in the Gila monster's saliva, known as exendin 4, was discovered to mirror a hormone in the human body that regulates blood sugar. Today, a synthetic version of this protein is used to create life-changing medication for millions of people living with type 2 diabetes. The desert's most reclusive inhabitant has, in its own quiet way, offered a profound gift to the world. As the Gila monster finds a comfortable ledge to rest upon, let yourself find that same sense of stillness. We are moving now into the deepest, most silent part of the night. Take a moment to check in with your own body. Notice if you are holding any tension in your shoulders or your jaw, and let it soften, just as the desert softens when the wind dies down. Feel the rhythm of your breath becoming slow and steady, matching the ancient, patient heartbeat of the dunes. The world is growing very quiet now, and the air is becoming perfectly still. In this deep pocket of the night, the desert reveals its most hidden quality, a silence so profound that it feels like a physical presence, wrapping around everything like a cool velvet blanket. Your breathing is slow and rhythmic now, a gentle rise and fall that mirrors the quiet undulations of the dunes. The desert air has become perfectly still, and it carries a refreshing coolness that feels light against your skin. In this space, there is no rush, no pressure, and no noise. You are simply existing in the vast open peace of the night. Deserts are often cited as the quietest places on our planet. In many parts of the world, we are surrounded by a constant hum of activity, traffic, electronics, the distant murmur of voices. But out here, the ambient noise levels often drop below 20 decibels. To give you a sense of how quiet that is, a soft whisper is usually measured at 30 decibels. In the heart of the desert, the silence is so deep, it is almost audible, a pure, clean canvas of stillness that allows your mind to finally let go of the day's echoes. This silence is amplified by the unique physics of the night. You might notice that in the desert, a distant sound, perhaps the soft scurry of a beetle or the far-off call of an owl, seems to carry for miles. This is because sound travels much further and more clearly in cold, dry night air than it does in the warm, humid air of the day. The lack of moisture means there are fewer water molecules to absorb the sound energy, allowing the vibrations to glide across the landscape, reaching your ears with a crystalline clarity. It is as if the night itself is helping you listen to the heartbeat of the earth. Unlike a forest or a meadow, the desert offers what scientists sometimes call a true silence. In more temperate regions, even the slightest breeze creates a chorus of rustling leaves, swaying branches, and snapping twigs. But in the arid expanse of the dunes, there is very little vegetation to catch the wind. Without the white noise of foliage, the silence becomes absolute. It is a rare experience to be in a place where the only thing moving is the air itself, passing over the smooth surfaces of the sand and stone without a single snag. If you listen very closely, in the moments after the wind has died down, you can hear a sound that few people ever get to experience. The sound of the desert settling. As the temperature drops, the individual grains of sand contract and shift. It is a tiny microscopic chorus, a series of infinitesimal clicks and sicks as millions of grains find their final resting place for the night. It is the sound of the earth getting comfortable, much like you are doing right now, settling deeper into the softness of your blankets. This profound quiet isn't just a physical experience, it's a biological one. Psychologists have found that being in a truly silent environment like the desert can significantly lower our levels of cortisol, the hormone associated with stress. In the absence of noise pollution, our nervous systems begin to recalibrate. The brain stops scanning for threats and starts to enter a state of deep restorative calm. This desert silence acts as a natural lullaby, gently nudging the mind toward the threshold of sleep. As we sit in this stillness, we begin to notice that the desert is not just made of shifting sand. Beneath the dunes and between the vast plains, there are the ancient solid structures that give this land its shape. These are the geological bones of the desert, the rocks and ridges that have stood watch over the silence for millions of years. Let's turn our attention now to these silent sentinels and the stories written in their weathered, ancient faces. In the soft silver light of the moon, the rocks of the desert take on a character all their own. They are not merely cold stones, they are the keepers of time, enduring the kickle of heat and cold for eon. As you look closer at these ancient boulders, you might notice a strange metallic sheen on their surfaces, a dark, almost obsidian-like coating that glimmers faintly in the starlight. This is known as desert varnish. It is a thin, mysterious veil composed primarily of manganese and iron oxides that creates a polished, leathery appearance on the faces of the rock. It feels incredibly smooth to the touch, like a piece of pottery that has been buffed by the hands of time. This varnish is a testament to the patient, slow-moving pace of the desert. It is not a simple layer of dust or a stain from the rain. Instead, it is a biological masterpiece created by microscopic bacteria. These tiny organisms live on the rock surface, slowly concentrating minerals from the air and the occasional dewdrop. It takes thousands of years for this coating to form even a fraction of a millimeter in thickness. When you see a rock covered in a deep, dark varnish, you are looking at a process that began long before the rise of modern civilizations. It is a record of 1,000 years of quiet, microscopic labor. Because this dark coating takes so long to accumulate, it has served as a canvas for humans throughout history. Ancient peoples discovered that they could create lasting messages by scratching through the dark, thin layer of varnish to reveal the lighter, unweathered rock beneath. These are called petroglyphs. In the stillness of the night, you can imagine the hands of a traveler from 5,000 years ago, carefully carving images of bighorn sheep, sunbursts, or winding rivers into the stone. These drawings remain perfectly preserved today because the desert air is too dry to erode them, allowing us to share a moment of connection with those who rested in this same silence millennia ago. The wind, too, acts as a master sculptor, working on a much grander scale. In parts of the desert where the ground is made of softer sediment, the constant, unidirectional breeze carves out magnificent ridges known as yardangs. From a distance, these long streamlined shapes look like the hulls of giant, upturned ships. Protruding from the sand, they are perfectly aerodynamic, shaped by the wind to offer the least resistance. As you drift toward sleep, imagine these stone vessels anchored in a sea of sand, frozen in time as the wind whispers softly around their curved edges. In other regions, where the rock is layered with different levels of hardness, the elements create the whimsical forms of hoodoos. These are tall, thin barriers of rock that rise up from the desert floor like silent sentinels. A hard capstone sits at the very top, protecting the softer pillar beneath it from the rare but powerful desert rains. Over millions of years, the surrounding earth is washed away, leaving these delicate, gravity-defying towers standing alone against the horizon. They seem almost fragile in the moonlight, a reminder of how the most patient forces, the wind, the frost, and the occasional drop of water, can create monuments of breathtaking beauty. But even the hardest rock and the tallest spire eventually bow to the power of the most elusive and precious desert element, water. While it is rare, water is the lifeblood that carves the canyons and sustains the spirit of the land. As we move deeper into the night, the dry, rocky plains begin to give way to a different kind of landscape. Our path leads us toward a place where the absolute silence of the stone is replaced by a soft, rhythmic pulsing, a hidden sanctuary where the deep, secret waters of the earth finally find their way to the surface. As the soft, rhythmic pulsing of hidden water grows clearer, the landscape begins to transform. In the heart of the vast, dry expanse, a miracle of biology and geology reveals itself. The desert oasis. It is a sudden, breathtaking island of green tucked away within the rolling dunes and jagged rocks. Here, the air feels different, heavier, cooler, and carrying the sweet, earthy scent of damp soil. This isn't a mirage, but a physical meeting point between the surface world and the deep, dark reservoirs hidden beneath the Earth's crust. An oasis is formed when an underground aquifer, a layer of water-bearing rock or sediment, finally reaches the surface, often through a natural spring or a low-lying basin where the ground level dips below the water table. In these quiet pockets of the world, the desert's harshness is softened by the presence of life-giving moisture. There is something profoundly peaceful about the water found here. In many cases, this is what scientists call fossil water. It did not fall as rain last week or even last year. Much of it fell as rain or snow more than 10,000 years ago, during a time when the Earth's climate was vastly different. For millennia, this water has been slowly, patiently, filtering through layers of sand and stone, protected from the sun and the wind, moving at a pace of only a few inches per day. It has been traveling through the darkness for 10,000 years just to emerge into the starlight of the modern desert night. To touch the water of a deep desert oasis is to touch a remnant of an ancient world, a cool gift from the distant past. Rising above these pools are the iconic silhouettes of the date palms. These trees are the true architects of the oasis ecosystem, acting as a living umbrella for everything that grows beneath them. Their long, feathery fronds create a thick canopy that filters the moonlight and traps moisture, creating a cool, humid microclimate. Under this green ceiling, the temperature can be significantly lower than the surrounding dunes, allowing delicate ferns, mosses, and smaller fruit trees to thrive in the middle of the wasteland. The palms protect the garden below, and in return, The garden keeps the roots of the palms cool and shaded. The generosity of these palms is remarkable. A single, healthy date palm can produce up to 200 pounds of fruit in a single year. These dates are dense with natural sugars and nutrients, providing a vital energy source for the creatures of the night and the people who have called these oases home for centuries. But the oasis is more than just a garden. It is a critical navigation point for the wider world. For millions of migrating birds, these small patches of green are like lighthouses in a dark, empty sea. After flying hundreds of miles across the barren sand, these travelers descend into the palms to rest their wings and drink from the ancient springs, finding sanctuary before continuing their long journey across the globe. In the stillness of the night, you can almost hear the water breathing, a slow and steady replenishment of life. It is a place of deep restoration, where every leaf and every drop of water works in harmony to resist the drying wind. Yet, in the desert, water is always in a state of transition. While the oasis provides a permanent sanctuary, in other parts of the desert, the balance between water and air is much more fragile. When water flows into a wide, shallow basin but has no way to reach the sea, the dry desert air begins to reclaim it, molecule by molecule. As the water vanishes into the atmosphere, it leaves behind a ghost of its presence, a transformation that turns the landscape into something surreal, shimmering, and perfectly white. As the desert air reclaims the last traces of moisture, it leaves behind a shimmering, crystalline world, the salt flats. These vast white plains, often called playas, are the result of a patient geological process that feels almost like the desert's own form of memory. They form in basins where water flows in from the surrounding mountains but has no path to the ocean. Trapped in these low-lying bowls, the water has nowhere to go but up, vanishing into the dry sky and leaving behind every mineral and salt it carried on its journey. Over thousands of years, these minerals accumulate layer by layer until the ground itself becomes a crust of pure, brilliant white. In the high-altitude plains of Bolivia, the Salar de Uyuni stands as the ultimate expression of this phenomenon. It is the largest salt flat on Earth, a landscape so immense it covers over 4,000 square miles. Beneath its hexagonal patterned crust lies an estimated 10 billion tons of salt. In the moonlight, this expanse doesn't look like Earth at all. It looks like a frozen sea or a fragment of a distant, pale moon fallen to our world. The silence here is profound, a heavy, muffled quiet that settles over the landscape like a thick blanket. There are rare moments when a thin veil of water, perhaps only an inch deep, rests atop the salt after a light rain. In the absolute stillness of the desert night, this shallow layer of water transforms the ground into the world's largest natural mirror. The boundary between the earth and the sky simply disappears. If you were to stand in the center of the Salar during these times, you would feel as though you were floating in the heart of the galaxy, with stars glowing brightly above you and an identical cosmos shimmering beneath your feet. It is a place where the heavens and the earth become one, a perfect, reflective symmetry that invites the mind to drift into a state of deep, weightless calm. This surface is so incredibly level and vast that it is used by space agencies like NASA to calibrate the altimeters of satellites orbiting high above the Earth. Because the salt flat is flatter and more uniform than the surface of the ocean, it provides a perfect 0 point for measuring distance from space. It is a reminder that even in the most remote corners of our planet, the ground beneath us is connected to the technology that watches over the globe. But the value of the salt flats goes deeper than the surface. Beneath the crust lies a rich, mineral-heavy brine. Within this liquid is a treasure essential to our modern world, lithium. This element, the lightest of all metals, is extracted from the brine to power the batteries in our phones, our computers, and the vehicles that move us toward a quieter, cleaner future. Even here, in a place that seems so still and ancient, the desert is quietly providing the energy for the world beyond its borders. While the salt flats represent the final resting place of water that has surrendered to the sky, other parts of the desert tell a different story. Not all water evaporates. Some of it retreats deep into the earth, far beyond the reach of the sun's heat. To find this hidden moisture, life must be incredibly persistent, sending out long, silent explorers into the darkness of the soil. While the salt flats are defined by what remains on the surface, some of the desert's most successful residents are defined by how deep they are willing to go. One tree in particular has mastered the art of the deep search, anchoring itself into the earth with a determination that is as quiet as it is powerful. In the quiet shadows of the desert night, where the starlight touches the twisted branches of the mesquite tree, a silent and incredible journey is taking place beneath the surface. While we see only the gnarled wood and the delicate, feathery leaves above, the mesquite is defined by what lies hidden. It is a master of the deep search, a living bridge between the parched air and the ancient reservoirs of water locked far below the reach of other plants. To survive here, the mesquite has developed a level of persistence that is almost hard to fathom. These trees are known for having the deepest recorded roots of any desert plant, with some specimens sending their tap roots down more than 160 feet into the earth. Imagine a root system descending through the darkness, passing through layers of clay and stone, reaching down the equivalent of a 15-story building just to find a single cool sip of moisture. This profound connection to the water table allows the mesquite to remain green and vibrant even when the surface soil has been baked dry by months of relentless sun. It does not wait for the rain. It finds its own way, anchored by a determination that stretches deep into the heart of the world. The mesquite is not just a survivor, but a provider for the desert floor. It belongs to the legume family, which means it possesses the unique ability to fix nitrogen. Through a quiet partnership with specialized bacteria living in its roots, the tree takes nitrogen from the air and converts it into a form that enriches the soil. In this way, the mesquite acts as a natural fertilizer, creating a small island of fertility around its base. Other plants often huddle beneath its canopy, benefiting from the improved soil and the dappled shade, making the mesquite a cornerstone of the desert ecosystem. Even its seeds are designed for the long game of patience. A mesquite seed is encased in a hard protective shell that can remain viable in the dusty soil for decades. These seeds are like tiny dormant dreams waiting for the perfect combination of moisture and warmth to finally wake up. They can sit through 20 or 30 years of drought, perfectly preserved and ready to sprout the moment the conditions are right. This endurance ensures that the mesquite lineage continues, no matter how long the desert remains dry. The wood of the mesquite is as tough as its spirit. It is incredibly rich and heavy, growing slowly over many years. Because of this density, the wood burns very slowly and holds an intense, steady heat, which has made it a prized fuel source for those who have lived in the desert for generations. But it offered more than just warmth. The tree also provided a vital source of life. The long tan-colored pods produced by the mesquite are highly nutritious and naturally sweet. For many indigenous cultures, these pods were a primary staple, ground into a fine, protein-rich flour that could be stored for a long time. It was the bread of the desert, a gift of sweetness and strength from a tree that knows the secrets of the deep earth. But while the mesquite represents the low, steady endurance of the desert, there are other inhabitants that live for the brief, spectacular moment. While the mesquite waits decades to grow its branches, some plants wait decades just to show their faces for a few short weeks. When the conditions are exactly right, when the deep roots of the trees and the sleeping seeds in the sand receive a rare, overwhelming gift from the sky, the entire landscape undergoes a transformation so sudden and so brilliant, it seems almost like a dream. This is the phenomenon of the superbloom, where the silent brown earth is suddenly hidden beneath a sea of color. The desert is a place of profound secrets, and perhaps its most beautiful secret is the superbloom. Imagine, if you will, a valley that has known nothing but sun-scorched earth and dry wind for 10 or 15 years. To the casual eye, it looks empty, perhaps even lifeless. But just beneath the surface, tucked into the top few inches of sand and gravel, trillions of tiny seeds are sleeping. They are waiting for a very specific miracle. Superblooms are rare events, occurring only after unusually wet winters, where the rain falls not in a single flash flood, but in steady soaking intervals. This specific timing is crucial. These desert wildflowers have evolved a brilliant biological defense. Their seeds are coated with special chemical inhibitors. These chemicals act like a lock on a door, preventing the seed from germinating. A light drizzle isn't enough to wash the coating away. This is the plant's way of ensuring it doesn't make a fatal mistake. If a seed were to sprout after a small, fleeting rain, it would quickly wither and die in the returning heat before it could produce its own seeds. The chemical coating only dissolves when a certain threshold of moisture is reached, a clear signal from the environment that there is finally enough water stored in the soil for the plant to complete its entire life cycle, from its first green leaf to its final colorful blossom. It is an extraordinary display of natural patience. Some of these seeds have been known to survive in a dormant state for over 50 years, resting in the blistering heat of the sand through decades of drought, just waiting for their one moment to wake up. When that moment finally arrives, the transformation is breathtaking. The brown floor of the desert vanishes beneath a carpet of vibrant color, purples, electric yellows, and deep oranges stretching as far as the eye can see. It is an explosion of life that changes the very air itself. During a true superbloom, the collective fragrance of millions upon millions of tiny flowers becomes so intense that it can be smelled for miles, carried on the gentle desert breeze like a sweet floral perfume. It is a reminder that even in the harshest environments, life is simply waiting for the right moment to shine. But as the night deepens, the vibrant colors of the day fade into soft shades of charcoal and silver. Take a moment to look up once more. The stars have shifted slightly in their slow overhead crawl, marking the passage of the hours. The air is growing even crisper now, and the heat of the day feels like a distant memory. As the landscape settles into the deepest part of the night, a new kind of quiet takes hold, a stillness that prepares the earth for the arrival of the morning dew. As you lie there, feel the gentle weight of your blankets and the coolness of your pillows. It is a soft, comforting cold, much like the surface of a smooth desert stone in the hours before dawn. In this deep quiet, a subtle transformation begins. The air, though dry, holds a tiny secret of moisture. As the temperature of the ground continues to drop, it eventually falls below what scientists call the dew point. This is the exact moment when the air can no longer hold its invisible water vapor, and tiny microscopic beads of liquid begin to cling to the surfaces of rocks, leaves, and sand. This desert dew is a silent, nightly miracle. In an environment where it may not rain for months at a time, these few drops of condensation are a critical water source for the smallest inhabitants of the dunes. Tiny insects, or the delicate lace-like structures of lichens clinging to ancient boulders, rely on this nightly gift to survive. It is a precise physical dance, the ground radiating its heat into the vastness of space until it is just cold enough to pull water out of the air. It is a reminder that even in the most arid places, the atmosphere provides for those who know how to receive it. Among the stones, there are species of desert moss that have mastered the art of the long wait. For most of the year, they look like nothing more than scorched, blackened patches on the earth, completely desiccated, brittle, and seemingly lifeless. But the moment the dew touches them, or a rare mist rolls in, they undergo a transformation that seems almost impossible. Within seconds, the dry, dormant cells soak up the moisture, swelling and turning a vibrant, lush green. They can go from a state of near death to full biological activity in the time it takes for you to take a single, slow breath. They are the masters of the resurrection, waiting in the dark for a single drop of water to begin their life anew. If you were to look closely at the ground, between the larger plants and dunes, you might notice a dark, knobby crust that looks like miniature, jagged mountain ranges. This is cryptobiotic soil, often called a living crust. It isn't just mineral earth, it is a complex, ancient community of cyanobacteria, mosses, and lichens that weave together to bond the sand grains. This crust is the silent protector of the desert floor. It acts as a living armor, preventing the wind from blowing the soil away and helping the earth absorb and retain every precious bit of moisture that falls. However, this living armor is as fragile as it is vital. It grows at a glacial pace, sometimes expanding by only a few millimeters over the course of an entire year. Because it is so brittle when dry, a single careless footprint can shatter this community, breaking the bonds that took a lifetime to form. Such a mark can leave a scar on the desert floor that takes decades or even a century to heal. It is a testament to the desert's paradoxical nature. It is a landscape of immense power and endurance, yet it is held together by the most delicate of threads. As the dew continues to settle and the living crust holds the earth in place, a subtle change begins in the atmosphere. The absolute stillness of the midnight hour is being replaced by a soft rhythmic movement. A breeze is beginning to stir, traveling across the open expanses of the dunes. It is a wind that carries the energy of distant weather patterns, a force that is about to rise and reshape the very horizon we have been resting upon. The breeze you feel now is the beginning of a rhythmic conversation between the sky and the sand. In the desert, the wind is more than just moving air. It is the sculptor of the landscape and the carrier of its many names. In the vast stretches of the Middle East, there is the shamal, a persistent wind that can blow for days, smoothing the edges of the dunes and carrying the fine silken dust of the plains into the high atmosphere. These winds are the breath of the desert, sometimes gentle and cooling, sometimes powerful enough to change the shape of the horizon overnight. Among the most majestic of these atmospheric events is the haboob. The name itself comes from the Arabic word for drifting or blowing, and it describes a phenomenon that is as awe-inspiring as it is silent from a distance. A haboob is a massive wall of dust and sand born not from a simple gust, but from the collapse of a distant thunderstorm. When a storm cloud begins to rain out, the cooling air falls rapidly toward the earth. When this downdraft hits the flat, dry desert floor, it spreads out in all directions, kicking up a colossal wave of sediment. These walls of dust can rise several thousand feet into the air, creating a moving mountain range of earth that can be many miles wide. To see one from a distance is to witness the desert in its most active state. Yet as it passes over, it brings a strange, muffled stillness as the thick air dampens all sound. But the journey of this dust does not end at the desert's edge. The finest particles are lifted so high that they escape the local weather patterns and enter the great invisible rivers of air that circle our planet. Every year, millions of tons of dust from the Sahara are carried across the vast, dark expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. This journey takes days as the fine, mineral-rich powder travels thousands of miles away from its home. This dust eventually falls over the lush, emerald-green canopy of the Amazon rainforest. It is one of the most beautiful and quiet ironies of our natural world. The driest, most barren place on Earth serves as the primary source of life for the wettest, most vibrant jungle. The Saharan dust is rich in phosphorus, a vital mineral that is often washed away from the rainforest soil by constant heavy rains. By sending its dust across the sea, the desert provides the essential fertilizer that allows the Amazon to thrive and breathe. This connection reminds us that no part of our world exists in isolation. The desert is not an empty void, but a vital organ in the Earth's living system, nourishing life half a world away while it rests under its own canopy of stars. As the wind continues to move across the open expanses, it begins to change. It seeks out the low places, the deep cracks, and the ancient passages carved into the stone. As it flows away from the wide dunes and into the narrow embrace of the desert canyons, the air begins to settle and pool, creating a different kind of quiet. We follow that wind now, feeling its coolness sharpen as it descends into the winding shadows of the earth. As we descend from the open plateau into the mouth of a winding canyon, the air undergoes a subtle but profound transformation. You might expect the deep rock to hold on to the day's heat, but at night, a phenomenon known as temperature inversion takes hold. Because cold air is denser and heavier than warm air, it behaves much like water, flowing downward and pooling in the lowest points of the landscape. While the high rims of the canyon may still feel the lingering breath of the sun, the canyon floor becomes a reservoir of deep, crisp cold. This inversion creates a pocket of stillness where the temperature can be 10 or 15 degrees lower than the land just a few hundred feet above. This localized cooling creates chinque microclimates, hidden sanctuaries where life can exist in defiance of the surrounding arid environment. In these deep shaded cracks, you might find delicate mosses clinging to the stone or ferns unfurling in the shadows. Here, the evaporation rate is slowed by the towering walls, allowing moisture to linger much longer than it would on the open dunes. It is a secret world within the desert, a place where the harshness of the sun is replaced by a gentle, damp coolness that feels like a soft exhale from the earth itself. These narrow passages, often called slot canyons, are the masterpieces of water. Over millions of years, infrequent but powerful flash floods have acted as a sculptor's chisel. When a rare storm breaks over the distant mountains, the water funnels into these narrow cracks with incredible force, carrying abrasive sand and silt that grinds away at the soft sandstone. The result is a series of fluid, undulating walls that look like frozen waves, a testament to the patient and rhythmic power of water in a land defined by its absence. If you were to run your hand along these smooth, cool walls, you would feel the ridges of what geologists call cross-bedding. These are not just patterns in the stone. They are fossilized sand dunes from an age long forgotten. Hundreds of millions of years ago, these were shifting mountains of sand, much like the ones we walked across earlier. Over eons, they were buried, pressurized, and turned into stone, yet the diagonal lines of the ancient wind remain etched in the rock. To stand in a canyon is to stand inside a physical record of the wind's history, surrounded by the ghost of dunes that lived and died before the first dinosaurs walked the earth. In the deep quiet of the canyon night, the acoustics change. You might notice that a falling pebble or a soft sigh seems to carry much further and sound much clearer than it would during the day. This is because the air within the canyon becomes more uniform in temperature as the night deepens. During the day, layers of air at different temperatures refract and scatter sound waves, but the steady, cool air of the desert night acts as a perfect conductor. The echoes are crisp and clean, bouncing off the panstone walls with the rhythmic clarity that makes the canyon feel like a great natural cathedral. As the echoes fade into the darkness, the stillness brings a new sensation to the foreground. The desert is not just a sight or a sound, it is a scent. Even in the driest corners of the canyon, a faint, intoxicating aroma begins to rise from the earth, carried on the cooling breeze. It is a fragrance that signals a change in the atmosphere, a scent that has been locked within the plants and the soil, waiting for the touch of the night air to release its ancient secrets. This fragrance, drifting through the cool canyon air and across the open flats, is the scent of petrichor. It is perhaps the most evocative smell in the natural world, a perfume that feels both startlingly fresh and incredibly ancient. Even when the clouds are nowhere to be seen, the desert soil seems to hold this aroma in its very pores, releasing it as the humidity shifts in the deep of the night. Petrichor is not a single thing, but a delicate chemistry between the earth and the atmosphere. It is created by soil-dwelling bacteria and certain plant oils that accumulate in the ground during long periods of dry weather. When moisture in the air increases, these oils and compounds are released, creating an invisible cloud of scent that humans are remarkably attuned to. Scientists have found that we are more sensitive to the smell of petrichor than sharks are to the scent of blood in the water. It is a primal connection, a deep-seated recognition of the promise of life and renewal in a land that is often defined by its thirst. One of the primary architects of this iconic desert perfume is the creosote bush. To anyone who has spent time in the arid reaches of the Southwest, the smell of creosote is the smell of the desert itself. Its small, waxy leaves are coated in a complex resin that smells sharply of rain and clean earth. But for the bush, this fragrance is not a gift for our senses. It is a sophisticated tool for survival. The oils that produce this scent act as a chemical defense, a way for the plant to claim and protect its territory. These compounds seep into the surrounding soil, creating a zone where other seeds struggle to sprout. In the competition for the desert's most precious resource, water, the creosote bush uses its scent to ensure it has enough space to breathe and grow without rivals nearby. As you breathe in this cool, resinous air, imagine standing before a specific cluster of these bushes in the Mojave Desert, known as King Clone. At first glance, it may look like a simple, unremarkable ring of greenery, but it is actually one of the oldest living organisms on our planet. King Clone has been growing in the same spot for nearly 12,000 years. This single organism was a tiny seedling at the end of the last ice age, long before the first pyramids were built or the first cities were founded. It has sat in the silence of the desert for over 4 million nights, watching the stars shift their positions and the climate of the earth slowly change, a silent and persistent witness to the flow of time. The way these ancient plants grow is a lesson in the beauty of patience. A creosote bush does not grow tall and imposing like a forest tree. Instead, it grows in a slow, expanding circle. As the central original stem eventually dies after centuries of life, the plant sends out new clones from its root crown, forming a ring of genetically identical stems. Over thousands of years, this ring moves outward at a pace so slow it is almost imperceptible, leaving a hollow center where the ancestor once stood. If you were to look down from above, you would see these perfect emerald rings etched into the desert floor, living ripples of time that expand by only a few millimeters every century. These rings are the true masters of endurance. They survive on almost nothing, standing through the most intense summer heat and the deepest winter freezes, their roots holding onto the earth with a quiet, unbreakable strength. They remind us that life in the desert is not about speed or grandeur, but about the steady, rhythmic persistence of simply being. They are the elders of the dunes, anchors of life in a landscape that is always in motion. The fragrance of the creosote begins to settle now as the deepest part of the night takes hold. The air has reached a point of perfect crystalline stillness, and the stars above seem to pulse with a slow, steady light. We are entering the final hours before the dawn, a time when the desert feels less like a landscape and more like a vast, silent vessel holding on to the memories of everything that has ever passed across its sands. The world is perfectly quiet, perfectly cool, and perfectly preserved in the dark. In this profound stillness, the desert reveals its greatest role, that of a natural time capsule. While other environments on Earth are busy recycling life, forests breaking down fallen leaves, and oceans dissolving the traces of the past, the desert is a keeper of records. The incredibly dry air acts as a gentle preservative, halting the process of decay. Without moisture, the tiny bacteria and fungi that usually break down organic matter simply cannot thrive. Because of this, things that should have vanished millennia ago remain almost exactly as they were the moment they were left behind. Imagine a piece of woven linen or a leather sandal, abandoned in a cave thousands of years ago. In a humid jungle, it would be gone in a single season. But here, in the arid cradle of the sands, it waits. This unique environment is the reason many of the world's most significant archaeological discoveries have been made in desert regions. Ancient scrolls, delicate textiles, and even the remains of people from lost civilizations have been found in a state of preservation so perfect they seem to have been placed there only yesterday. The desert doesn't just bury the past, it holds it in a long, dry slumber, shielding it from the hands of time. If we look even deeper into the layers of the earth, far beyond the history of humans, we find the desert's memory stretching back tens of millions of years. In the vast stretches of sandstone, you might stumble upon the fossilized tracks of dinosaurs. These are not just bones, but moments frozen in time. The heavy, rhythmic stride of a giant as it walked across a muddy shoreline that eventually dried and hardened into stone. These tracks, preserved in exquisite detail, allow us to visualize the weight and movement of creatures that haven't walked the earth for an age. The desert floor is a library of stone, where every layer is a page from a different era of our planet's life. Even the smallest inhabitants contribute to this record. Scientists often study what are known as paleo-middens, ancient nests built by desert rodents like pack rats. These small animals would collect seeds, twigs, and plant fragments, which then became encased in a hardened, amber-like resin over thousands of years. These middens are like time-stamped snapshots of the environment. By analyzing them, we can see exactly what flowers were blooming and what trees were growing 40,000 years ago, allowing us to reconstruct the history of the climate with incredible accuracy. It is a humble but profound way the desert remembers the world as it once was. This preservation offers us a rare gift, the ability to see the earth as it existed long before the mountains rose or the rivers shifted their courses. As you rest now, imagine the vastness of that timeline. You're lying in a place where time doesn't just pass, it accumulates. Every grain of sand is a tiny fragment of a much older world, ground down by the wind, but never truly lost. The desert is a place where the past and the present exist side by side in the cool, dark silence, protected by the lack of rain and the steady, patient air. As we contemplate these ancient mysteries, the deepest part of the night begins to ever so slightly soften. The stars are still brilliant, but there is a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a feeling that the long, dark hours are reaching their peak. The first hint of a transition is coming, not yet light, but a change in the quality of the shadows. The desert, having guarded its secrets through the night, prepares to greet the very first faint whispers of the approaching dawn. In these final hours before the sun breaks the line of the horizon, a strange and beautiful phenomenon often appears, known to many as the false dawn. If you were standing in the center of a vast, dark erg, you might notice a faint, ghostly pyramid of light stretching upward from the eastern horizon long before the actual sunrise begins. This is the zodiacal light. It isn't caused by the atmosphere, but rather by sunlight reflecting off a vast cloud of interplanetary dust that orbits our sun. This cosmic dust, left behind by the tails of comets and the collisions of asteroids, creates a soft, ethereal glow that has guided travelers for millennia. It is a reminder that even in the deepest desert, we are inextricably linked to the mechanics of the solar system, watching the very debris of our neighborhood catch the morning light. As this subtle luminescence grows, the rhythm of the desert shifts once more. The nocturnal inhabitants, the fennec foxes with their wide ears, the sandcats with their padded paws, and the jerboas with their long balancing tails, begin their quiet commute back to the safety of their underground homes. They have finished their night's work and now seek the insulation of the earth to escape the coming heat. You can imagine them retreating into the cool, dark tunnels they have carved into the dunes, settling into the sand to begin their own period of rest. The desert is a place of shifts and handovers. As the hunters of the night retire, the landscape prepares for a different kind of life to emerge. But for now, there is only the sound of the wind and the soft retreat of paws into the shadows. Curiously, as the sky begins to lighten and the stars start to fade, the air around you may feel colder than it has all night. It is a paradox of the desert that the temperature often reaches its absolute lowest point just at the moment of sunrise. You might expect the approaching sun to bring immediate warmth, but the physics of the earth work differently. Throughout the entire night, the ground has been radiating its stored heat upward into the clear, dry sky, sending it back into the vacuum of space. By the time the first sliver of the sun appears, the earth has been losing energy for 10 or 12 hours straight, without a blanket of clouds or humidity to hold that warmth near the surface. The mercury in the air continues to drop until the very second the first direct rays of sunlight touch the sand. This transition brings us into the blue hour, a final fleeting window of deep, cool calm before the world turns gold. During this time, the shadows lose their sharp edges, and the entire landscape is bathed in a soft, monochromatic indigo. There is a profound stillness in the blue hour. The wind often dies down to a mere whisper, and the atmosphere becomes perfectly uniform in temperature. This creates a unique clarity where sounds from miles away can carry across the dunes with startling precision. It is the desert's final moment of meditation, a deep breath held in anticipation of the day. As you lie there, feel the weight of this deep blue calm settling over you. The long journey through the night is nearly complete, and the air is at its most refreshing, its most salve. Your own rhythm has mirrored the desert's cooling. Your breathing is slow, your body is heavy, and your is as quiet as the dawn-lit dunes. The stars have done their work, the ancient rocks have held their silence, and the sands have shifted into their morning rest. We are standing on the threshold of a new cycle, but for now, there is only the peace of the cooling earth, the softness of the fading shadows, and the gentle, rhythmic pulse of a world that knows exactly how to rest. In this space between the stars and the sun, let yourself sink into the final, deepest layer of the desert's quiet embrace. As the last echoes of the night fade into the soft indigo of the morning, we find ourselves at the end of our long walk through the cooling sands. The journey through the dunes is nearing its conclusion, but the landscape itself never truly stops. It simply shifts into a different state of being. We have seen how the desert breathes, how it watches the stars, and how its inhabitants move with a quiet, calculated grace. Now, as the blue light of the dawn begins to touch the highest peaks of the dunes, there is a sense of profound completion. The desert night is far more than just a period of darkness. It is a vital cycle of renewal and conservation. In the world of ecology, this time is essential for the environment to rebalance its books. By radiating the day's intense heat back into the atmosphere, the desert prevents itself from becoming a permanent furnace. This nightly cooling allows the soil to contract, the rare moisture to condense, and the biological clocks of countless organisms to reset. It is a necessary exhale after the long, hot inhale of the day, a reminder that all living systems require a period of stillness to sustain their vitality. As you imagine the ground beneath you, remember that every grain of sand tells a story of time, wind, and the distant stars. These tiny particles are the travelers of the earth. Some were once the jagged peaks of granite mountains, broken down over millions of years by the expansion of ice and the persistent touch of rain. Others are the remains of prehistoric seabeds, lifted by tectonic shifts and ground into fine powder by the relentless friction of the wind. Each grain has been tumbled and polished for eons, carrying the geological memory of the planet within its microscopic frame. To rest upon the sand is to rest upon the history of the world itself. Your own body in this moment knows exactly how to find its own rhythm of rest, mirroring the cooling of the desert floor. Just as the desert's temperature drops to meet the air, your own internal systems are slowing down, seeking a peaceful equilibrium. Your heart rate follows a natural downward curve. Your muscles release the tension they've carried throughout the day, sinking into the mattress as if settling into a soft, welcoming dune. You are tethered to the same biological laws that govern the fennec fox in its burrow and the saguaro waiting for the dew. You are part of this cooling world, and your body knows the way to deep, restorative sleep without you having to guide it. The silence you feel around you now is the very same silence that has covered these dunes for eons. It is a heavy, velvet quiet that existed long before the first civilizations and will remain long after the winds have reshaped the mountains. In the desert, silence is not an absence of sound, but a presence of its own, a stable, ancient companion that offers a sanctuary from the noise of the modern world. It is a silence that has witnessed the slow rotation of the Milky Way and the passage of 1,000 generations. You can lean into this silence. It is strong enough to hold you, and old enough to know the secret of perfect peace. As the stars finally retreat into the brightening sky, how much you should charge that sky. Remember that sleep comes as naturally as the shadow crossing the desert floor. It is an inevitable progression, a soft curtain that eventually falls regardless of effort. You don't need to reach for it. You only need to be still and let it arrive, like the shadows that lengthen and eventually merge into the singular darkness of the night. Your thoughts are softening, blurring at the edges, and blending into the quiet expanse of your dreams. The desert has found its rest. The air is still, and the world is hushed. The journey is complete, and the dunes are at peace. May your rest be as deep and as vast as the desert night, and may you wake as refreshed as the earth at dawn. Sleep now. Sleep in the cool, quiet heart of the sands. Good night.